What is up, Packers fans? Welcome back to the Daily Draft. I'm your host and the publisher of Packer Report, Ross Uglem, and joining me today is Jacob Morley. Jake, how are you, man?
I'm good, man. Just one day closer. One day closer to being done with having to put out draft content and then getting to do it's like a reboot of fun because we're at the end of this process where it's like, okay, we have watched the guys, the hay is in the barn, as they say. And then once these guys are Packers, then it's kind of like a new cycle of fun stuff to do. And you kind of get even more reacclimated with these players. You get numbers, you get rookie training camp, and then it's like, man, the season will be here before you know it.
Absolutely. Our draftmas presents are almost here. Today, we are breaking down, and I'm just going to tell you, they're going to take one of these guys. They're going to take one of these guys that we're going to not by name, but they're going to take somebody from this position group. We are breaking down defensive linemen. Today's show brought to you, of course, by Brewski Light Lager from our friends over at Badger State, just minutes away from beautiful Lambeau Field. They're going to have so much cool stuff going on. Go check them out. Food trucks, Wisconsin vendors over there, some of the best beers in the state, including their own beer. And some live music, lots of crazy stuff going on over at Badger State this draft week. I see draft week. Yes, I did. They're going to actually get started over there on April 22nd, which is crazy, and have stuff going on at Badger State all week long. Let's break down Green Bay's situation or their need. I would say it's pretty dire. They need a TJ Slayton replacement, quite literally. I mean, he was their top run defender a season ago, moves on to the Cincinnati Bengals, and they might need a Kenny Clark replacement. If Clark does not play better this upcoming season, you could certainly look to Green Bay to look for a trade or potentially just an outright release to get out of that contract extension that they signed him to and move on to a younger player. But right now, you're forced. I mean, as if you had to play a game today, Kenny Clark, granted he was healthy and he's been relatively healthy, but Kenny Clark, granted he was healthy, would be your nose tackle. And the only one you've got. There is no nose tackle depth of any sort. And I don't know what they're going to do there. I think you absolutely have to add a body. I'm a little surprised they didn't find any defensive lineman in free agency. What's your thought on kind of the state of things?
I mean, talking about surprising and needing a nose tackle, I'm kind of surprised they didn't bring back Slayton for what he got on the open market. He didn't get a huge contract, and so that makes me think: are they changing what they want to do up front as far as like body style and how they want to attack people in the run game? Do they want to go with more of these penetrating guys and give up some yards per carry, but be able to get after the quarterback? I don't know, and we'll see. And I think this draft is going to really tell us what they want to do at this position. Like if they take a Walter Nolan, like a penetrating three-tech type guy again to pair with Devontae Wyatt, who's very similar. Like I think that would kind of maybe tell you what direction and how they want to paint this picture for the defense of 2025.
I don't think you can build the whole plane out of that, but you're right. Maybe they do. In talking about those three-tech guys, there I think is some question, right? Do you make long-term commitments to Wyatt, Wooden, or Brooks? Those, all three have shown good things. Brooks was a revelation. I think Wooden they're probably kind of happy with. And then Wyatt would be one of the best defensive linemen in the league if he could finish. I mean, his ability to penetrate, his ability to disrupt is quite excellent. It's just the actual tackling and the actual corralling of the quarterback that he sometimes, fails at. But everything from a traits perspective, they thought they were getting around one. I mean, I think he's shown. This class overall, we talked about the linebacker class last time, not maybe being the greatest. This class overall is really, really good. Mason Graham is kind of the guy. He's the one player I think Green Bay has no chance to draft. I don't think there's any chance they're going to get Mason Graham. But there's a tier after that I think you can kind of talk yourself into. I think one of these guys will be gone. I do, but I don't know which one. and you can kind of talk yourself into different members of this tier depending on what your team needs. That's Kenneth Grant, Mason Graham's teammate, freak, huge, physically large, super talented human. Derek Harmon, kind of a blend between Grant and Walter Nolan. Walter Nolan being the 3-tech type that you're talking about, the guy that I would prefer the Packers not take just because he is so similar to guys they already have in-house. But those are kind of that next tier would be Kenneth Grant, Derek Harmon, and Walter Nolan. What are your thoughts on those guys?
Yeah, I'm a big Kenny G fan. Grant is probably, when it comes down to it, who I think need will meet value, will meet testing, all that stuff, and has a really, really legit shot to be the pick at 23 if he's there. Harmon has been linked to the Packers for a long, long time. I could see that. Absolutely. I think one of those two guys would be an excellent pick for the Packers. I'm kind of with you on Nolan. I think Walter Nolan is a really good football player. Don't get me wrong, but I'm kind of with you on like, what are we doing here? I get we want to get after the quarterback, but
there better be a 4th round 1-tech.
Yes, yeah, and there might be. We'll talk. They're there. They are there.
Yeah.
Those guys are, but it would have to. That would be a pick where you'd have to kind of say, okay, well, let's see how the rest of this plays out. Because it won't make sense at the time. But yeah, all three of those guys are really good football players. I would rank them Grant, Harmon, Nolan as far as who I would want in Green Bay. Sure. I think Grant is the highest upside player of those three. I think he has the potential to really be like a Haloti Ngata, Vita Vea, like those type of players that, he's not going to be getting you 12 sacks a year, but, he's going to potentially
he gets 6. He's super valuable.
Absolutely. And because he's going to, he's going to shut down the run game. And I think he's got enough potential as a pass rusher that he can really push the pocket and get upfield. And so I think he's a guy that, you have to account for. And that's the thing with like the guys I just mentioned, Vea and Ngata, guys like that, man, we fans appreciate how good they are, but not enough. Not enough that if you are in those meeting rooms with teams throughout the week, they're sitting there thinking, what the hell are we going to do with Vita Vea? How are we going to not let this guy wreck the game? And I think Kenneth Grant has the potential to be a guy like that. I think Derek Harmon's comp for me is Kenny Clark. I think that's who he is. I think he plays a very similar brand of football where you can play him at the nose if you want to. You could play him in other spots across the defensive line if you want to. He's very versatile. West Coast player, underrated probably throughout this process. I don't get why both those guys don't get talked about more higher in this year's draft class. And maybe they'll both be gone. I don't know. They could be. But those are three really good football players. And like you said, Ross, this is a really, really deep defensive tackle class. And what we know about Goody is he typically attacks the strength of draft classes. We've seen it with tight end a couple of years ago. We've seen him take a bunch of offensive linemen in years that the offensive line group was deep, even if it's not in round one. I bet they take 2. I bet they take at least 2 of these defensive tackles, maybe 3. I don't know. Just because that's kind of what history has told us, that Brian will just say, well, this is where the strength of the draft class is. Why would I go anywhere else?
Yeah, I agree. I think, you ask me, hey, Ross, I'll give you $1 million if you pick the Packers pick. My answer is Derek Harmon. That's if you just said I'll give you $1 million if you get pick 23 correct, my answer is Derek Harmon. I almost fear that it'll be Walter Nolan, but I think that's definitely on the table. There's fun depth too right after those guys. Tyleik Williams, Darius Alexander, that's the Toledo kid. Tyleik Williams is a guy I really like. I think he probably has less pass rush juice than Kenneth Grant, but Tyleik is like, you're just not running.
Yeah, so I was just going to say that. He will single-handedly shut down a run game like tomorrow. That'll be, as a rookie, he will do that.
I think if you could do something splashy in round 1 and somehow come away with Tyleik in round 2, even if it's a trade up, like you've accomplished a lot of things as far as I'm concerned. And then guys really like different dudes. Like I'm a big TJ Sanders guy. Mark Eckel with Packer Report, his scouts really like Alfred Collins more than I think consensus. I really like CJ West. You talk about round 3, round 4, one tech type guy. CJ West transferred into Indiana and played for Signetti for 1 year. I really like CJ West. It's a really good class of defensive linemen this year, especially on the defensive tackle front. It's a good year to need them as Green Bay does.
Yeah, it's CJ West, our pal Owen Reese, who works the East West Shrine game. Big fan. And so CJ West went to the Shrine game. Big fan of CJ West. So if Owen Reese is talking about interior guys, offensive or defensive, and he likes them, I listen. So
For sure.
CJ West is a guy that I think will be a really good football player for whoever takes him.
All right, what are the Packers like?
So the Packers, I mean, one thing that is consistent with the Packers and interior defensive linemen is big guys, big jumps. Like that is what they're looking for. Even in the past, you go all the way back to like BJ Rod, even like Justin Harrell, who did not pan out. Big jumps. Like BJ Raji was a big guy, did not have a huge RAS, but he had a great vertical for a guy his size. So you're looking for that. They typically have stayed away from the smaller guys, but then also, 2 years ago they took, or 3 years ago, was it 2 or 3? I don't know, 2. They took Carl Brooks, who was undersized, and they took Wooden, who was undersized. Now, both of those guys are kind of sub-package rushers. I don't know if they have different rules for that kind of stuff, but your traditional interior defensive linemen, you're looking for the 6'3", 6'4", 305 to 315, those body types that have good jumps. And there's a lot. There's a lot of those guys in this year's draft class. I said this on the tier podcast when we did interior defensive line. The last 2 years, there have been 4 total tier 1 types fits for the Packers at interior defensive line. There are 10 in this year's draft class. So
yeah, it's a good year to need it, man.
Yep. So this is definitely a year that I think they could either double or triple up, just because, again, like I said with Kenneth Grant, they could just be sitting on the board and just, again, like, well, this guy is clearly the top guy on our board. We already took one, but let's take 2.
It's an interesting spot too, because, and I say spot when I mean that, I say like defensive tackle, because the Packers like notoriously don't really take sub 8 RAS guys. Here's since 2005, which would be when Ted took over, I think. 2005, here are your sub 8 RAS guys at the defensive tackle position. Kingsley Keke, TJ Slayton, Montravius Adams, Jarrell Worthy, Kenny Clark, Christian Ringo, Josh Boyd, Lawrence Guy, Justin Harrell, Kyrie Thornton, Carl Brooks, BJ Raji, Jonathan Ford, and Johnny Jolly. And we don't have data from Mike Daniels, who was 5'10" and a half and probably not a +8 guy. Like, yes, they have specific athletic things that they like. With that said, overall athleticism, which of course is height, weight based, meaning like these dudes have athleticism against other defensive tackles. It's not like, oh, well, D tackles aren't athletic. No, well, they're being ranked against other D tackles. They take guys that are lower than the 80th percentile at D tackle, I think, at a much higher frequency than any other position on the football field.
Yeah. And I think it's one of those positions too, like we talked about it with linebacker. You don't necessarily need to be the freak athlete to just do a job in the NFL. I mean, you're a grown man bumping skulls with another grown man, play after play. A lot of it is, what is your pass rush plan? What does your hand placement look like? Like how do you get into people? Like, how do you move people? Can you extend your arms? Can you bench someone off of you? Like, it's such a strength position. It's such a footwork and hands position that if you can run fast, like, who cares?
Freak athletes just aren't necessary. I agree. Okay. So I think the $1 million question is, do the Packers really want or need a one tech, or is it more of just a who gives a crap thing? And I want one. I do. I mean, I would like to get Grant or Tyleek or Harmon or West or whatever. Do you think there's a chance that they just don't care?
I don't know. I mean, that's what confuses me with the Slayton thing. I would have brought him back, not only because he was a one tech, he was a good one tech, and now you're going to have to try to find one in the draft again to play at the level he was playing at. That's not easy. That's probably not. Honestly, it's probably not going to happen. So I'm going to be really. I think the two most fascinating positions in this year's draft class or this year's offseason to kind of see how it shakes out is offensive line and defensive line. Just like, what is the plan? What is the plan moving forward?
Yeah, and I was trying to. This is great podcasting. I was trying to pick up Spotrac. Like, what?
He got it was less than 10 APY, wasn't it?
Yeah, I'm trying to think of who's still available. Raekwon Davis is not really a nose. Like, what's the backup plan, right? What's the John Jenkins at 35 years old? Is that like if things don't go well in the draft? Linval Joseph at 37, right? Jonathan Hankins at 33. I don't know what the answer is. Khalil Davis at 28 years old, right? I think Jordan Phillips is still available.
Kadeem Telfort, TJ Glover. Can he play T-Tech? Can he play one tech?
So, right. So the question is like, so what is the plan if the draft doesn't shake the way you want it to? You know, that's my question. Because I think you think Isaiah Simmons is sort of that plan if linebacker doesn't shake out the way they want to in the draft.
Yeah.
What's the nose tackle plan? I don't know. You know, who defends the run? That was sort of a question. Favorite guy for the Packers? I think my favorite guy for the Packers would be Tyleek Williams in round 2. If they could figure out a way to take Emeka Egbuka or Shamar Stewart or Savon Ravel or whatever at 23, Gods be good, Will Johnson falls, whatever, and come back with Tyleek Williams, even in a trade up, or maybe teams just do the Tavondre Sweat to Tyleek and go, you're not going to rush the passer. You don't have top 60 value. We're just, no, thank you.
Yeah. Tyleek in round 2 would be filthy. That would be a jumping for joy. Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, you look at that, like people ask, and this is a little bit off subject, but I'm going to weave it in. Like, what's your ideal draft? First 3 picks. It's like, man, if they can somehow land Michael Williams round 1, Tyleek Williams round 2, and then give me like a Jalen Royals round 3, you're not
running the ball on Green Bay.
No. And you wouldn't see me with pants on for a week. So, but I mean, yeah, you wouldn't. Those first 2 guys are run stoppers first. Michael obviously has the potential to be a guy that can get there in the sack department. Tyleek, I think we talked about with Kenneth Grant. Like, I think Tyleek can do a lot of that stuff, just maybe to a lesser extent. I think he can push the pocket. He's such a strong guy.
I don't think he has the gifts that Kenneth Grant has.
No. Yeah. No, but you can't. But on 3rd and 10, 3rd and 9, if he's on the field in a pass rushing situation, I don't think you can just let your center block him. No, I think he is going to put your center in your quarterback's lap if the cornerbacks can cover for 2.5 seconds. Like, so, so it all plays together, but he's a good player.
Late guys, I love CJ West. I don't know if you'd qualify him as late. I still have a round 3 grade, even though the way he tested with Deone Walker from Kentucky, just the way they used him. He's the 6'7" kid, and Green Bay has not done that. Like, they don't, I'm famous for they don't take hilariously sized offensive tackles. They also don't take hilariously sized defensive tackles. Like, these huge dudes are just not on their team, right? And I wanted them to take Tavondre Sweat last year. They never had a guy that looked anything like Calais Campbell. They never had a guy that looked anything like any of those, truly enormous defensive tackle types. And he would be a threat, but I've seen him ranked in the mid hundreds. Like, I've seen guys just like Brugler, I think, barely has a draftable grade on him. And you watch the way Kentucky lines him up at edge and lines him up at 1 and lines him up at 3. And like, Kentucky was treating him like their best defensive player.
Mm-hmm.
If I can get him super late to just stop the run and just take up a gap and a half in the run game, I'd do that for sure.
I think that's your Tavondre Sweat of this year's draft class, where
Sure.
you know exactly what he's going to do for you, and it's just how do you value it? You know, how do you value a guy that probably is just going to be a run stopping one tech?
Right, might get 2 sacks a year, and they're probably cleanup sacks.
Yep.
I like the other Oregon defensive tackle too as a nose.
Yeah, he's good. Another one tech guy late in the draft that I really like that checks every box for the Packers is Zeke Biggers out of Georgia Tech, and he is. You talk about first guy off the bus. He is impressive. I talked about this on the Tiers podcast. Like he's got like the 35-inch arms, 6'4", 6'5", in that 320 range, tested extremely well. You wonder, like, why wasn't he better in college? But he does have some really, really high highs. He honestly reminds me a little bit of Slayton when he came out of Florida, where it's like, okay, there's some good film out here. There's some bad film out here as well on this guy. Can we take him, get him into our program, and develop him into a useful NFL player? I think the answer is yes. And honestly, Biggers is a much better athlete than Slayton was coming out of Florida. So he's a guy that I really like, and I think he can do a lot of good stuff for you, especially where you're going to get him. You know, day 3 type of guy. You can bring him into your room and immediately play him at one tech and have confidence that he's going to be able to plug a gap. So if you're looking for just like that one tech type guy, he'd be a really fun, round 4, 5, 6 type guy, especially like circling back all the way to the beginning of this podcast. Well, if they do take a Walter Knowlton round 1 and a Zeke Biggers or a Walker round 6, like that would make sense to me. I
agree. All right. Do the Packers take one in the first 4 rounds? Yes. They're if they don't take 2. Like I said, if you take Walter Nolan in round 1 and CJ4 or CJ West in round 3, you've remade your defensive tackle room. Yep. I'm not really interested in Walter Nolan in round 1, but they might be. I mean, you could do that. You could take one of these penetrating guys early that has a chance to really get 6, 7 sacks. And then you could take a nose tackle in round 4 and really, like I said, kind of have remade your room. I assume you agree?
Yep.
This one was kind of an easy one for that one. They need the bodies. They need the talent upgrade. They need it all. So thank you guys so much. Buy the draft guide. I don't know if I gave you a chance to talk about the draft guide, but it's in the link is in the description, whether you're on the podcast side or the video side. Also, drink brewski, drink Badger State. Have a great weekend, everybody. Go Pack, go.